I want you to picture a specific moment. It is a Tuesday evening. A man sits in the parking garage of a restaurant he can technically afford, doing math on his phone before he walks inside. Not because he is careful with money, because he is terrified. His reservation is at 7, his wife is already at the table, the bill will be somewhere between $200 and $300, and he is sitting in his car in the dark, trying to figure out if he can cover it without triggering an overdraft on the account his wife does not know about. This man earns $211,000 a year. I am not describing a rare case. I am describing a pattern so widespread that financial researchers have given it a name. They call it high-income poverty. And it is quietly consuming the lives of millions of people who, from the outside, look like they have figured everything out. The homes are large, the cars are new, the vacations appear on social media with captions about being grateful, the clothes are right, the restaurants are right, the neighborhood is right, and underneath all of it, the anxiety is constant, the savings account is hollow, and the gap between the income that arrives and the money that disappears is so perfectly sized that almost nothing is ever left. My name is Zik, and today I want to show you the exact mechanics of how this trap works. Because the trap is not obvious, and it is not a character flaw, and it is not simply about spending too much. It is a carefully constructed set of forces that activate specifically at high income levels, and they are almost invisible until you understand exactly what you are looking at. By the end of this video, you will understand why earning more money without understanding this can actually make your financial situation worse, and you will understand what the people who escape this trap do differently, not in their income, but in how they think about the relationship between money, identity, and time. Let me start with a number that should not make sense. Studies consistently show that a significant portion of households earning over $200,000 per year are living paycheck to paycheck. Not comfortably. Paycheck to paycheck. According to survey data from financial research firms, roughly 1 in 3 high-income earners, people making more than $200,000 annually, report that they could not cover a $10,000 emergency without borrowing money or going into debt. Read that again. 1 in 3. At $200,000 a year, the instinctive reaction to that fact is disbelief, followed quickly by judgment. How? How do you earn $200,000 and have nothing? What kind of person does that? That reaction is the first trap. Because the moment you frame it as a personal failure, a character problem, a discipline problem, a stupidity problem, you stop asking the more important question, which is, what is the system that produces this outcome so reliably across so many people at this specific income level? The answer to that question is not flattering, and it does not let high earners off the hook, but it is accurate. And accuracy is the only thing that actually helps. Force 1, lifestyle inflation moves faster than income. There is a psychological phenomenon that behavioral economists call the hedonic treadmill. The concept is straightforward. When your circumstances improve, your expectations improve in almost perfect synchronization. The raise that was supposed to create breathing room creates a new normal instead. And the new normal requires the raise just to maintain. At modest income levels, this force is somewhat contained. You go from a studio apartment to a 1-bedroom. You go from a 10-year-old car to a 5-year-old car. The increments are small because the income increments are small. But at high income levels, the increments become enormous. The jump from $80,000 to $150,000 does not produce a slightly nicer apartment. It produces a pressure, social, psychological, sometimes explicitly professional, to live in a neighborhood that signals your success, to drive a car that communicates your status, to send your children to schools that reflect your position, to take vacations that match your peer group, to dress at a level that is appropriate for someone with your income and your title and your perceived trajectory. Here is the math that nobody does at the moment of the raise. A person earning $80,000 a year living on $70,000, has $10,000 a year to save or invest. That is modest but real. That same person gets promoted. Their income rises to $160,000, doubled. They do exactly what seems reasonable. They upgrade their life to match their new income. Their spending rises from $70,000 to $140,000. They are now saving $20,000 a year. In dollar terms, their savings improved. But here is what actually happened. Their lifestyle now requires $140,000 per year to sustain. If they lose their job, they need to replace $140,000 in income, not $70,000. Their burn rate doubled alongside their income. And their savings, $20,000 on $160,000 in income, represents a savings rate of 12.5%, which sounds acceptable until you realize that someone earning $80,000 and saving $10,000 was also saving 12.5%. The income doubled. The lifestyle doubled. The savings rate stayed identical. The risk profile doubled. And the person standing in the middle of this equation feels like they are getting ahead when they are, in terms of financial resilience, standing exactly still. This is Force 1, and it operates quietly in increments disguised as reasonable progress. Force 2, high income triggers a specific tax burden nobody plans for. The tax conversation is not exciting. It is also not optional. When your income crosses certain thresholds, the relationship between your gross income and your actual take-home pay changes in ways that most people do not model in advance. They see the salary number. They negotiate the salary number. They plan their life around the salary number. And then the paycheck arrives, and it is significantly smaller than the number they planned around. At $200,000 in income in the United States, a significant portion is taxed at the 32% federal rate. Add state income tax, which in states like California or New York can reach 9 to 13% on high earners, and you are looking at an effective combined rate that can push past 45% on income above certain thresholds. $200,000 in gross income can produce $110,000 to $120,000 in actual take-home pay in high-tax states, sometimes less. The trap springs here. The lifestyle was built around $200,000. The actual income available is $115,000. The gap has to be filled somehow, and it usually gets filled with debt. The credit card, the home equity line, the car loan that seemed manageable, the financial instruments that bridge the gap between the life the salary promised and the life the actual paycheck can support. And the debt has an additional invisible cost. It is not static. It grows. Interest compounds in the wrong direction. The gap gets slightly wider every month, and the high earner, who is busy, who is exhausted from the work that produces the salary, does not do the math. They see the income, they do not see the effective income. They live in the spread between those two numbers until something forces a reckoning. Force 3. The social contract of high-income peer groups. This one is almost never discussed in financial content because it requires saying something uncomfortable about the social dynamics of success. When your income rises to a certain level, you stop spending with your old peer group and start spending with your new one. Your colleagues, your clients, your neighbors, your children's classmates, parents. These people have similar incomes and similar lifestyles, and there is a social contract embedded in those relationships that operates mostly beneath the surface. The contract sounds like this. We operate at a certain level here. Dinner is at this type of restaurant. Vacations happen at this tier of destination. The children's activities cost what they cost. The neighborhood association dues are what they are. The clothing worn to the company event communicates membership in the group. Nobody says these things explicitly. Nobody has to. The social enforcement is ambient, constant, and extraordinarily powerful. Humans are tribal creatures. The fear of exclusion from the tribe, of being perceived as not belonging, of being quietly categorized as less successful than assumed, is one of the most motivating fears that exists. And at high income levels, That fear gets attached to spending patterns in ways that make certain expenses feel non-negotiable, even when they are economically catastrophic. The person who earns 200,000 and lives in a neighborhood of people who earn 250,000 is not spending against their income. They are spending against a social contract that their income cannot quite sustain, and they are doing it because the alternative, the visible downgrade, the implicit admission, the quiet loss of social position feels genuinely unbearable. This is not a weakness, it is a deeply human response to a specific social pressure that activates with unusual intensity at high income levels. Understanding it is not the same as surrendering to it, but pretending it does not exist makes it impossible to escape. If this is clarifying something you have felt but never been able to name, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who need to hear it. Force 4. Complexity scales with income and creates hidden costs. Higher income tends to produce a more complicated financial life. More accounts, more products, more subscriptions, more professionals, accountants, financial advisors, insurance agents, more insurance policies, more properties, sometimes, more vehicles, more children in more activities. Each of these additions feels individually justified. The accountant saves money on taxes, the housekeeper frees up time, the financial advisor manages the complexity, the insurance covers the risk, but complexity itself has a cost that compounds invisibly. First, there is the direct cost. The accountant charges $3,000 a year. The financial advisor charges 1% of assets under management. The subscriptions add up to $400 a month. The services cost $600 a month. None of these numbers individually seems alarming. Collectively, they can represent $15,000 to $30,000 annually in overhead expenses for maintaining a lifestyle infrastructure that exists primarily because the income exists to justify it. Second, there is the management cost. A complex financial life requires attention, tracking, decisions, and coordination between professionals who do not coordinate with each other. And the person at the center of this complexity, who is also typically working extremely long hours, often does not have the bandwidth to manage it carefully. Things slip, subscriptions continue for services no longer used, policies renew without review. The financial advisor collects the fee without generating the return. The complexity becomes self-sustaining. Third, there is the opportunity cost. Every dollar spent maintaining the infrastructure of a high-income lifestyle is a dollar that cannot compound. At 7% annual returns over 20 years, $30,000 in annual overhead that could instead be invested represents a difference of over $1,200,000 in terminal wealth. The complexity does not just cost money now, it costs money for the rest of your earning life. Force 5. High earners are disproportionately targeted by wealth signaling products. This one is structural, and understanding it protects you from something that operates constantly against your financial interests. The financial services industry, the luxury goods industry, the real estate industry, and the advertising ecosystem broadly have spent decades and billions of dollars understanding exactly what motivates high earners to spend. They know psychology, they know the peer pressure mechanisms, they know the status anxieties, they know the time scarcity that makes people willing to pay for convenience, and they have built entire product categories specifically designed to extract money from people with high incomes. The whole life insurance policy was sold as an investment vehicle, the actively managed fund with a 2% annual fee that underperforms the index it is supposed to beat. The luxury lease is structured so that monthly payments feel manageable, while total cost of ownership is catastrophic. The private school whose tuition escalates 5% per year and whose social environment creates spending pressure far beyond the tuition itself. The financial advisor whose incentives are aligned with product sales, not your wealth accumulation. None of these products announce themselves as traps. They are marketed with language that speaks directly to the identity of successful people. Exclusive, sophisticated, what people at your level do, smart money moves, protecting your family, building your legacy. The high earner, who often lacks financial education despite impressive professional credentials, is genuinely more vulnerable to these products than someone with a modest income. Not because they are less intelligent, because they have more money to extract. The products can be sized larger, and the social proof is more convincing because their peer group is buying the same things. The escape from this force requires one specific habit: suspicion of any financial product that is sold rather than bought, and verification of every fee, every cost structure, and every performance claim before any commitment is made. Here is the math of the trap you don't know. Let me show you two people. Same income, same decade, completely different outcomes. Person A earns $200,000 a year. After federal and state taxes, their take-home pay is approximately $122,000. They spend $118,000 of it. They invest $4,000 annually. At 7% average annual returns over 30 years, that $4,000 per year becomes approximately $478,000. Person B earns $200,000 a year. Same tax situation. Same $122,000 in take-home pay. They spend $80,000 of it. They invest $42,000 annually. At the same 7% average annual return over 30 years, that $42,000 per year becomes approximately $5 million. Same income, 30 years. Person A retires with $478,000. Person B retires with $5 million. The difference is not an investment strategy. It is not market timing. It is not luck or inheritance or exceptional professional achievement. It is the gap between income and spending compounded across time. Person A spent 97 cents of every after-tax dollar they earned. Person B spent 65 cents of every after-tax dollar they earned. That 32-cent difference, multiplied across 30 years of compounding, produced $4.5 million of additional wealth. Not from a better job, not from a windfall, from the discipline of leaving a gap between what arrives and what leaves. The trap is not the income. The trap is the assumption that income and lifestyle should track each other. They should not. The gap between them is where wealth is built, and the higher the income, the larger the gap can be. Which means high earners have the greatest potential advantage, and by consistently closing that gap, they convert the greatest opportunity into the greatest wealth destruction. What escaping the trap actually looks like. Step 1. Calculate your real hourly rate. Your salary is not your compensation. Your compensation is what remains after taxes, after work-related expenses, and after accounting for the hours you actually give to your work. A person earning $200,000 who works 60 hours a week, pays $40,000 in taxes, spends $8,000 on commuting and work clothing and work-related meals, and counts the hours spent commuting and decompressing from a high-stress role, that person's real hourly rate may be $40 to $50. Meaningful, but not the $150 the headline salary implies. When you know your real hourly rate, every purchase converts naturally into hours of your life. The $30,000 car is 600 hours of your actual working life. The $5,000 vacation is 100 hours. This conversion does not tell you what to buy and what not to buy. It tells you the honest price of everything in the currency that actually matters: time. Step 2. Set your lifestyle number before the next income increase arrives. The most dangerous financial moment for a high earner is the moment a raise arrives. That moment is when lifestyle inflation locks in. And it locks in quietly through a dozen small decisions that each seem individually reasonable. A slightly nicer apartment, a slightly newer car, a slightly more expensive habit, and collectively produce a new lifestyle floor that will require that income level or higher to sustain indefinitely. The people who escape the trap make a decision before the money arrives. They define the lifestyle they want to live, they build that lifestyle, and when income increases, they do not renegotiate the lifestyle. They direct the additional income toward investment and savings first, automatically, and allow the lifestyle to remain static. This is not deprivation, it is sequencing. You build the income streams first, then you expand the lifestyle. The trap springs on people who expand first and try to build wealth from whatever is left. There is almost never anything left. Step 3. Audit every recurring expense for identity versus function. Go through every recurring monthly expense you have. Every subscription, every service, every policy, every membership. And ask yourself one question about each one. Am I paying for this because it genuinely improves my life, or am I paying for it because it communicates something about the kind of person I am? The question is not whether the thing functions. The question is whether the premium version, the version that costs 3 times as much as the alternative that also functions, is worth the difference. And the honest answer, for most premium purchases, is that the functional difference is small and the identity premium is large. Every dollar saved from cutting identity spending disguised as functional spending can be redirected. At 7% annual returns, $1,000 per month redirected from identity spending to investment produces approximately $1,200,000 over 30 years. The premium apartment does not produce that. The premium car does not produce that. The redirected investment does. Step 4. Quietly opt out of your peer group's financial norms. You do not need to leave your peer group. You do not need to announce that you are doing things differently. You do not need to have uncomfortable conversations about money. You need to quietly, privately, stop letting their spending patterns set yours. When the group dinner happens at the expensive restaurant, you can go and order what you want rather than what seems appropriately priced for someone with your income. When the vacation conversation comes up, you can take a different vacation rather than competing at the same price point. When the car lease comes up for renewal, you can make the decision based on what the car actually costs and what you actually need. The uncomfortable truth about peer group financial pressure is that it is largely imaginary. The people in your peer group are not carefully monitoring your financial decisions. They are managing their own anxiety. The social contract feels more binding than it is, and the high earner who quietly opts out of the most expensive expressions of it while remaining genuinely present in the relationships themselves typically discovers that the relationships survive intact and the financial results compound dramatically. Step 5. Define what the money is actually for. This is the question that the trap never allows you to ask, because the trap keeps you too busy earning, spending, and managing the anxiety between those two activities to stop and think clearly. What do you actually want your money to do? Most high earners, when they sit quietly with this question for the first time, find that the answer is surprisingly modest. They want security. They want time. They want the ability to make choices without financial fear. They want to stop feeling the knot in their stomach when a large expense arrives. They want, eventually, to not be dependent on a job they may or may not love for the rest of their working lives. None of those things require $200,000 a year in spending. They require a net worth large enough to generate passive income, a low enough burn rate to accelerate the accumulation of that net worth, and the clarity to stop adding lifestyle expenses that delay the date when real financial freedom arrives. The trap makes this clarity impossible by filling every available hour with the activity of maintaining the lifestyle it has created. Escaping requires creating the space to ask the question, and then the honesty to answer it. The actionable steps you should take starting today. This week, calculate your real take-home pay, not your salary, your actual monthly deposit after all taxes and deductions. Then subtract your monthly spending. The number that remains is your monthly savings. If it is less than 20% of your take-home pay, you are in or approaching the trap. Regardless of your income level, this month, run the identity audit on your recurring expenses. List every subscription, service, membership, and policy you pay for. Next to each one, write either functional, meaning you would keep it even if no one would ever know you had it. Or identity, meaning part of its value is what it signals. Then evaluate honestly whether the identity expenses justify their cost. This quarter, calculate the 30-year compounding cost of your lifestyle inflation. Take the difference between what you currently spend and what you would spend if you had locked your lifestyle at 50% of your take-home pay. Invest that difference at a 7% annual return for 30 years. That number is what your lifestyle inflation is actually costing you, not this year, over the course of your earning life. This year, define the number, not the income number, the net worth number that, if you reached it, would mean you never had to work for financial necessity again. Calculate how long it will take to reach that number at your current savings rate, then calculate how long it would take if you increased your savings rate by 10 percentage points. The difference in years between those two scenarios is what the trap is costing you in time. Finally, let me leave you with this. The man in the parking garage, the one doing math on his phone before walking in to dinner with his wife, that man is not a cautionary tale about greed or irresponsibility. He is the entirely predictable output of a set of forces that nobody warned him about, operating exactly as designed. The forces are real, the social pressure is real, the tax burden is real, the complexity is real, the targeted financial products are real, and the lifestyle inflation mechanism is so well calibrated to human psychology that it is nearly invisible to the person it is happening to. None of that makes the outcome inevitable. What makes the outcome inevitable is not understanding the mechanism well enough to interrupt it. The highest earning generation in American history has, in aggregate, less than 3 months of emergency savings. The income was there, the mechanism extracted it. And it extracts most efficiently from people who believe, reasonably but incorrectly, that earning more will eventually solve the problem on its own. Earning more does not solve the problem. Understanding the problem solves the problem, and understanding changes everything. Not gradually, but immediately, because clarity about what is actually happening produces decisions that are structurally different from the decisions made inside the trap. The $200,000 income is not the trap. The assumption that comes with it is the trap. The assumption that a large income justifies a large lifestyle. That financial anxiety at high income levels is temporary rather than structural. That the gap will close on its own if you just keep earning. And the moment you see it clearly enough to name every force operating against you and every mechanism keeping the cycle in place, it loses most of its power. The parking garage is not the end of the story. It is the moment before someone decides to understand what is actually happening. And understanding in this case is worth more than any raise that has ever arrived in any high earner's inbox. If this landed the way it was meant to, subscribe. I make videos like this every week, and I try to make everyone worth your time. I am Zik. I will see you in the next one.